Hello everybody, today group 3 will present about Pramipexole and the EMA decision of changing the labeling of Pramipexole due to several reports about the severe adverse drug reaction of Pramipexole on the market. So our group includes 4 members, me, Sean as the first presenter, and then Armani, Dahlia and Martha. Our presentation includes 6 main parts, as you can see that in the screen. And so let's move on to the first part, which is some general information about the drugs. As we know that Pramipexole, it is a non-agonist dopamine agonist, which shows the in vitro specificity and full intrinsic activity at the D2 subfamily of dopamine receptors. And moreover, this drug also shows higher binding affinity to D3 receptors compared to D2 or D4 receptor subtypes. And it is usually being indicated for the symptomatic treatment of idiopathic Parkinson's disease. So through clinical trials, adverse drug reaction of Pramipexole could be reported, and these are some of the typical ADRs of Pramipexole, which you can see that, for example, falling asleep during activities of daily living and somnolence, or dyskinesia, postural deformity, or rhabdomyolysis. Among these ADR, sudden onset of sleep or sleep attacks need to be considered properly, especially in the patients who intend to drive or operate machine, because in the past some scientists they found out like some case that people when they use the Pramipexole and they got some problems when they were driving or operating machines. For example, in 1999, Fruch he reported a Parkinson patient who received Pramipexole experienced sudden irresistible attacks of sleep while they were driving, and it all ended up with sustained motor vehicle accidents. After that, Horser also reported some cases when people fell asleep while driving, and it led to some minor motor vehicle accidents. So this is a really serious problem, and this idea it raised the concern of not only the clinicals, the scientists, but also the medical agencies and the companies to think about a solution. So let's continue the presentation with my colleague, Mother.
Hi, I'm Marta. So what could be the reason for a problem? European Medicines Agency, EMA, approved Mirapexine, a Pramipexole product in 1998 based on clinical trials performed in idiopathic Parkinson's disease PD patients, showing end-of-dose phenomena on optimized L-DOPA therapy. A clinically relevant benefit of Pramipexole were demonstrated in this patient group compared to placebo. The side effect profile presented for Pramipexole were typical for dopamine agonists, for example, hallucinations, gastrointestinal effects, and sleep disturbances. Increased daytime somnolence has long been recognized as a side effect of dopaminergic drugs, although there were no descriptions on sudden irresistible sleep attacks in clinical trials or national pharmacovigilance databases before a study published in 1997. So why were these adverse drug reaction ADR not identified before marketing of the drug? When the clinical study was done, only few people reported that they have experienced sleep attacks after taking Pramipexole. One possible explanation for that could be due to the fact that people suffering from PD often have sleep disorders. Sleep disorders are observed both with and without dopaminergic drugs in persons with PD. Another possible reason for why this ADR was not reported is because of the definition of sleep attacks. An ADR without a clear definition is hard for patients to report. Thereby, an ADR might be excluded even though it should be included. At most events where the attacks occurred are not while driving, it is also believed that these events are underreported in this population. In a study where a low dose, 30 micrograms per kilo of Pramipexole was administered in rats, an increase of sleep was reported. At a dose of 500 micrograms per kilo, wakefulness increased. This result can be considered contraindicative, but is explained by that the dopamine D2 receptor is activated at a higher dose. The drug particularly has a high affinity for the dopamine D3 receptor subtype. The D3 receptor is associated with sleep and is activated at lower concentrations. Sleep attacks have mostly been associated with the new more D3 selective agonists. Reports show that the incidence of somnolence is increased at doses higher than 1.5 milligrams a day. There is evidence that sudden irresistible sleep attacks are an adverse reaction of pramipexole. Pramipexole and rafinurole were the first dopamine agonists associated with road crashes, but now all dopamine drugs are implicated.
So next up, I will leave my words for my colleague, Amani.
Hi, I am Amani, and I will discuss problem management and start with marketing authorization holder guidelines. Process begin with reports collection. Both authorization agency and company should receive reports about suspected adverse effect, both serious and non-serious one, and they should validate those reports that they have the minimum criteria to be accepted. These reports should follow up, and any attempt to obtain follow-up should be documented. Data that related to this documentation should be treated as medical record. Both agency and company should have quality management standards in place to ensure that the data of every stage of case documentation is easily accessible. Benefit and risk assessment. The benefits represent at Pramipexole is well tolerated and effective drug in treatment motor symptoms in both early and advanced stages of Parkinson's disease. It has similar efficacy and tolerability in different races, and if we use it as initial treatment, that may delay the onset of dyskinesias by delaying the start of levodopa therapy, and the beneficial effect on non-motor symptoms such as depression and weight loss. While the risk that when we compare our drug with levodopa treatment, we can see that Pramipexole is associated with higher risk in developing hallucination and the sleeping attack that can be life-threatening to the patient and others, depends on situation. And we can see at Pramipexole also is associated with impulse control disturbance and peripheral edema. But at the end, we can see that the benefit is still overweight the risk if the warning exists and control may.
So let's come to the final parts with the presentation of my colleague, Dalia.
Hi, my name is Dalia, and I will start by presenting the consequences of this AGR. So, what's the consequences of identifying the sleep attacks as an AGR of Pramipexole? The consequences were many, no matter from which perspective they were observed. From the medicine agency and companies, the most important changes were regarding the labeling. We can see on the right side 2 examples of warnings that were added to the SPC. One of the products with the active substance Pramipexole is Cifrol. Cifrol is indicated for advanced idiopathic Parkinson's disease. The treatment with Cifrol started in 1998, which means that the sleep attacks as an ADR did affect this product and had some consequences on the company as well. Some of the main consequences were new safety warnings in SMPC and PL, update of summary of products characteristics and package leaflets, renewal of marketing authorization. Another consequence of this AGR was the maintenance of periodic benefit risk reports. The aim of these reports is to ensure that whenever a signal is detected, it is reached to the medicine agency and companies. and thereby handle it in best possible way. The indication of Pramipexole was also extended to include treatment of early Parkinson's disease. In early Parkinson's disease, Pramipexole delays the onset of later motor complication compared to levodopa. Even some changes on the driving safety was considered, but since the sleep attacks were infrequent with Pramipexole, patients were allowed to drive even during the treatment. But the medicine agency made sure that the manufacturers of Pramipexole advised the doctors to warn the patients about the driving risks. So those were the main consequences from the medicine agency and company's perspective. But what was the consequences from the patient perspective? They might be few, but one that is really interesting is the consequence due to the extended indication of the drug. Since Pramipexole delays the onset of motor complication compared to levodopa, people with Parkinson's disease can live a normal life for a longer period. As a group, believe that the decisions that were taken regarding Pramipexole are good, mostly because for some people that the combined treatment of Pramipexole and levodopa is essential. But we believe that they should have been stricter when it comes to driving during the treatment. Even though the sleep attacks didn't affect everyone, a few were affected, and we believe it is unnecessary to take this risk. In addition to the unnecessary risk, people with Parkinson's disease usually have bad motoric and might not be the most suitable in traffic.
So that's all the information that we want to provide to everybody. So thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.